So I feel like a video on toxic positivity has been long overdue. And I think that this is something really important to talk about, especially when you are working on yourself and trying to heal and find these methods, that you are told to seek, like a lot of spirituality practices, meditation, the positive thinking, psychology, things like that. But really, what happens here is you're not getting better, right? You have you're practicing all these things, you're doing all these things, but you still have these underlying issues. And while these things might be incredibly life-changing and people swear by them, just thinking positive, putting it out into the world, manifesting, all of these things, that might work for them because they don't have a history of trauma or abuse, or maybe they do, but they were able to move past it. They don't have the mental health issues that come along with things like that, like PTSD, CPTSD, the depression, anxiety, panic disorder, and the list goes on. So yes, positive thinking is amazing, and meditating is amazing, and manifesting is amazing, and it can bring you really positive results. There's no question about it. But when people are pushing that on you, saying that's all you need to do, just think positive, and you'll be fine, you'll be better, it'll go away, whatever, that is when it becomes toxic. So before I go into more of that, we now know that the brain is plastic. It changes. We can make new connections. We can make new associations. We can make new patterns in our brain. And yes, thinking positive does this over time, but also so does thinking negative. Our brain doesn't know the difference between a good association and a bad association. It just knows patterns. So we have these patterns in our brain that we are trying to break. And when we do things like positive psychology and positive thinking and meditation and manifesting and all of these things, we are working on breaking those patterns and making new connections and building this happier, more positive viewpoint of the world. But when I talk about it being toxic, it's when you have the people saying, oh, you're depressed, oh, you have PTSD, whatever. Just think positive. Just think these things, positive thinking, it'll go away, do these things. And that's when it becomes a toxic relationship with your positive thinking and practices and your actual healing. Because a lot of times with people that haven't processed things, like why we are stuck in these negative, what we view as negative patterns, like depression and PTSD and anxiety, it's because something happened in our brain and it rewired itself in that way, and now that's the pattern. That's our pattern. And until we acknowledge and let out what happened, we're still stuck in that pattern. Like maybe we were in an abusive situation and we couldn't get out of it. So your brain is still stuck in that situation, right? Because there was never an end to it. So we need to have that ending in order to then create new patterns that will stick and be positive and work. This is also where the body stores the information, not just in your brain with these connections that it made. The body also stores traumatic information, in muscle aches and in burning sensations and other like cognition issues. So many somatic issues stem from something happening that we haven't been able to process and not just let go of, but accept. There's a difference between forgetting and accepting. And what we need to do for positive psychology and all this manifesting and everything to work is we need to acknowledge the things that we weren't able to work past. And that can be in different ways. That can be through like talk therapy, CBT, CBT. There's different types. Psychoanalysis, writing, journaling, yoga. A lot of things are brought up in that, that we aren't aware that we're holding on to, and we don't judge it. Like in any of these situations, we don't judge it. We just acknowledge that it arose, it's there, and then we accept it and we end it. We put an end to it. So when you know it's ended is when you can talk about it without having the feelings of it actually happening again happen. When you're still living in that moment and present with it, that's when you can't talk about it without having a physical reaction, right? Heart racing, sweating, panic, things like that. And when you're ready to move on to a more positive thinking and rewire your brain in that way, you're ready because you can talk about it like it's in the past, because it is. There are so many people that are, neo-spiritual kind of bullshit hippie, that are like, only think positive, meditate on this, manifest this, like, do these positive things, and they're like, don't go back into that negative space. Don't go back into that. That's negative. That's not okay. You want to just stay positive. And that's toxic. There's never just light. There's never just dark. It is both. You can't have one without the other, and you wouldn't know one without the other. And neither one in our brains are associated with positive and negative. That's just, like I said, it's just patterns. So we don't want to get stuck in that. Don't think about your past. Don't talk about your past. Don't write about your past. Don't let it come up. Don't let it surface because it's negative. It's not negative. Maybe what happened, maybe that's traumatic. Maybe that's negative. But for it to surface and come up, that is actually really positive, because that means that you are healing. You are able to recognize it and recognize what you need to do to accept it, to move on, and then to heal. So what I mean by toxic positivity is that exactly, the people that are pushing all of this positive bullshit on you, to heal, and that's it. Like, it's just positive. That is toxic. That is so toxic. That is keeping you from actually healing. And most people that are seeking and having trouble with really healing have tried all of these things and they haven't worked. And that's why. It's because you're pushing away what the real issue is, what you're really holding on to. You're ignoring it and you're pushing it further and further and further down, which makes it even harder and more further away from you and your reality to grasp and accept and move forward from. And like I said, there's tons of therapies that can help with this, like and also CPT for like post-traumatic stress disorder, which I did, and I also do CBT, and I'm going to start psychoanalysis, and I've done other things for OCD, and I've done exposure therapy, and so I'm, you know, obviously not a therapist or anything, but I have a lot of background in dealing with mental illness and now physical illness due to mental illness and the suppression, like repression of it, because I was the type of person that never spoke up. I never talked about my problems. I never acknowledged them. It was something that happened. I wanted to forget about it and move forward, and that trauma builds. It builds and it builds and it builds, and then the rubber band breaks, and here we are. But I am here, and I am helping you help me as I go through this too. And I'm gonna post a lot of things. I want to do, you know, just little daily things, because I have pretty severe major depressive disorder also. So you know, there are things that you can do in the meantime while you're working through your deep shit, to be positive and enjoy life a little bit more at a time. And I've already said a couple things about doing one thing pleasurable a day, even if it's just going outside and sitting in the sun for 5 minutes, smelling a flower, petting a dog, you know, something so simple. Just one thing that you get pleasure out of a day. I think one of the best things you can do is do something for someone else. That, you know, I wouldn't necessarily say it's altruistic then, because you're trying to help yourself by helping someone else, but it works. It's definitely a motivation to keep going too, and to keep trying, and to feel worth, and to feel like you know, you have value, and people appreciate you being around, and that's really important, especially with major depressive disorder. You know, something that I do daily is I practice forgiveness, forgiving myself for putting myself in situations, not speaking up for myself, not you know, being open when I needed to be open, and also forgiving other people. Just one small thing a day, and it feels good. It feels good to do that, to not hold on to resentment and anger and regret. And that helps be content, right, with where you are in life and your struggles, and what you're going through at any given moment. Being content with it is key. Whether you're in pain or mentally, physically, whatever, accepting that in that moment, and that's part of your journey, and that's part of you, is part of contentment. You know, knowing that you're doing what you can to change and help yourself really helps. And gratitude, practicing gratitude, being grateful for the things that you can do, being grateful for waking up maybe, or maybe that little pleasurable thing that you did that day, or just being grateful for maybe you have one person that you can talk to, or a journal, or whatever. Just being grateful for something every day. And I'm grateful for my health, even though it's shit. Like, you know, I a lot of times can't walk or talk or whatever, but I'm grateful that I'm still able to sometimes. You know, I'm not completely bedridden. So that's incredible to me, because I was for a while. And, you know, it's just a good practice. And I know it's that positivity thing, but they do go hand in hand. And dealing with the main issue and practicing positivity are the key to healing, or at least living a happier, fuller life for you and the way that you can.